afternoon. I'd like to welcome you back to another edition of the Foul Playland. As always, I am Sir Foul Player of Brooklyn, coming at you live from my vehicle as I drive home. Wanted to do a short live stream. So making sure that my stuff is working. And I wanted to talk about one of the major conversations at hand happening in America and across the world, and that's the conflict in Iran. And I wanted to give more of an assessment of I'm not going to say why I think it's happening. It's more of an assessment of maybe one of the reasonings as to why it's happening in terms of like Trump's intentions or um whether you like Trump or hate Trump. I mean, like, people are gonna have differing opinions. I try to look at things more from a scaled perspective. I try to look, and one of the reasons that I find Trump very interesting in terms of American politicians is that many times Trump doesn't put his intentions out there to be easily read, and that could frustrate a lot of people. And I think he does it with the intention of frustrating his opposition. Um, like Trump will put out, like, I'll give an example, and this is more like something I see more in the second administration of Trump, and that's he'll put out a lot of like threats or a lot of like these crazy plans that he wants to pop off, and he may follow through with one or two of them. He may follow through with a like a scaled back version of what he wants. But he'll give people that oppose him like a lot to think about or a lot to chew on, and I think a lot of times that's the reason that he does that. Like, so you really don't know where he's coming from. Like, especially in his case, like where he has a lot of people that oppose him politically, and that's not just here in America. That's politicians worldwide. Like right now, for instance, you have like most of NATO that don't agree with Trump. You have uh, Canada that doesn't agree with Trump or like that may oppose Trump, in spite of the fact that Canada does a lot of business with the U.S. Hi, funniest streamer moments. Thank you for coming through and said you're new here. But one example that I give, or that I could give, is the conversations of America taking Greenland as an example, where Trump was constantly putting it out there like that, America wanted to take Greenland. And not to say that Trump has given up that endeavor. I still think that there's a world in which America does take Greenland, or a case in which America pressures Greenland into a relationship that's where Greenland is almost like a commonwealth, or something to that effect. Sorry, I had to blow my. Trump puts a lot of stuff out there, like into the like, so that it could be discussed, and damn, this bitch is stupid. Sorry about that. I'm trying to drive through traffic, and you have moronic drivers. But Trump will put stuff out like into into the world or into the internet, whatever have you, like to where you're gonna have a conversation about it. And a lot of times, I'm not sure if he's doing that in an effort like to try to gauge what people's reactions are in an effort like to try to see what his opposition, like whether the, here politically, or what these other countries may do to try to circumvent something that he may or may not intend to do, like a Greenland. But nevertheless, like I think that all these things, like the way he does these things, I find it very interesting. I find it very, like, I mean, like, Trump's not a vanilla politician in any sense. Like Trump, a lot of times politicians talk very um, opaquely or very vanilla, and then or they'll try to get you riled up emotionally, like i.e. Democrats, and then they'll try to then they'll stab you in the back and then blame conservatives. My brother, the boxing scholar, how you doing? LML, he wrote, laughing my ass off, it's over. I don't know what you're talking about, it's over, or like what you were referring to specifically. I mean, if you're talking about Iran being over and America being the victors in that country, I'll probably agree with you in that sentiment. But actually, while I'm on the topic, though, I do want to talk about what's happening in Iran, and one of the things that I think, or what, I'm not saying that this is like exactly what's happened down to it, what's happening down to a T, but Trump and his administration are making it seem that they're still negotiating or holding Iran accountable, some leadership structure in Iran. But what we do know, oh, he said not for Trump in the midterms. That's still yet to be seen. And that's one thing I do want to talk about is um, Trump's principal battle is like how elections are administered in America, and it's something that he's like put out into the atmosphere, like that our elections are funky. 2020 was the 2020 election was especially funky, and we did hear about a lot of the investigations being done in Arizona, in Georgia, but nothing has come of it yet. And I think that that's happening purposely. I honestly think that that there's a possibility that the Trump administration wrapped up Iran and Venezuela with the intention of, when begins to happen, like with the investigations into the election, some of the funkiness that happened in Maricopa County, like Arizona, some of the funky stuff that continued to happen in the subsequent elections after 2020 in Fulton County and Maricopa, that I sometimes feel that there's a possibility that Trump was so gung-ho about wrapping up Iran and Venezuela because he probably game planned, if I start to bring up the fact that the 2020 election was stolen, and we show proof that this is what actually took place, that's going to be a world um, a really hard thing to chew upon for much of the world. I mean, it's going to be, I mean, that's for the people that enabled the 2020 elections and the subsequent elections afterwards to be funky. I mean, you're talking about implications that are, treasonous, in like at least conversations that had to be had afterwards are teetering upon treason. I mean, like, a lot of our lives changed because of the elections. I mean, like, a lot of our constitutional rights were trampled upon, in terms of we weren't even allowed to speak on social media platforms about any sort of suspicion that many Americans had regarding the way that elections are administered in this country, in America. And a lot of that stems specifically from the 2020 election. Now, I mean, like, where most people in America, I mean, like, having lived through a Biden administration and seeing how Biden's not a politician that would inspire the most votes in the history of America, more than Obama, more than Trump. How something like a Joe Biden winning any sort of election is a joke. I mean, like, if you believe that Joe Biden received the most votes in the history of America, I mean, in 2026, your compass may be off, or you probably suffer from severe TDA. But I think that in many ways, if that news is to come out and proof is shown to that effect that the 2020 election was not above board, you know, the powers that be in this world could pop off a nuclear strike from Iran, for instance, in order to try to divert our attention away from something that's even more catastrophic, which are the fact that certain powers that be in America or abroad, I mean, like, because you never know if other countries screwed our election. I mean, like, but I could totally see a world in which, you know, Iran as a proxy to these powers that be that are that could have partaken in screwing over the 2020 election, where they order on Iran to you know, set off some sort of nuclear scare in an effort to try to divert our attention away from, you know, what is to me more subsequent news than a nuclear war. I think it's way more subsequent that our elections are not above board, potentially, and that so much of our lives had to be changed because our elections are not above board. But again, I mean, and that's one of the reasons that I think that there could have been a impetus as to trying to take the nuclear capabilities away from the bad players in Iran. But going back to the Iran situation, I mean, or moving on from that topic and like discussing Iran, you know, for tomorrow and for the future, Trump is basically putting it out there that, you know, he's negotiating with some people in Iran. But right now, nobody could tell me who's running Iran. I mean, most people don't know. I mean, what we do know is that a lot of the leadership group has been eliminated from that country. I mean, where there's rumors that they're up to like the third leadership group as we speak, that 2 sets of leadership groups were eliminated. I mean, we do know that the Ayatollah was removed, and some people say that a second set of leaders was also removed, and we're now down to potentially a third leadership group. I think that what's happening in Iran is that there's probably a ton of factions that are likely vying for power, or that they probably know that, listen, like, you know, America is not screwing around. They could take out all our infrastructure and we can't do anything back outside of, maybe us trying to power some sort of drone attack. We have no answers for their air force. We have no answers for their missile strikes. How do we not get these people to raise up on us into the future? Do we have to eliminate part of our own leadership that are heretics that are on this vibe of death to America? Like why do we have to continue with that in the future? I mean, like there's some of us, like there's probably some of Iran's leaderships or factions that are probably sick of the potential of their infrastructure being bombed. They're probably sick of the fact that they can't do business. Iran also exports oil. Right now, they're probably not capable of doing any of that with the threat of America or America's allies bombing Iran. So they're probably a large contingent, or there are probably many factions in Iran right now that are probably saying, listen, like, we don't want to keep this war continuing. Like, we don't want to continue this war. We probably don't even like these heretics that do want to continue this contention. Like there's probably a faction of Iran or a leadership group in Iran that are probably saying we'd be more than willing to deal with America and its allies into the future, and we'll be more than happy to start leading our country into a non-heretic stance of being when it comes to America and its allies. And that's just me brainstorming. I don't know, like, nobody knows what's happening in Iran. Anybody that'll tell you that they know 100% of what Iran's intentions are full of shit. Like, I mean, like, right now, like, Iran, their internet is extremely limited. The news that's coming out of Iran, I mean, like, a lot of it is state-sponsored media. They want but there's not much. I mean, like, a lot of it's highly censored, the news that's coming out of that country. So we don't really know up until, like, this conflict is at its end. No one is gonna know what's really happening in that country. But I've known, like, in Iran, that whole like, a lot of people's thinking is that Iran is similar to, like, Afghanistan, where, like, it's just the one religious group that's got everything locked down. I've heard from people that have been to Iran that whole even though the leadership group there is highly religious, and, like, they're putting it out there that there's this whole death to America and ultra Muslim way of living. I've heard from people before this conflict broke out that have been in Iran recently that say that that's a bunch of BS, that that's just a front that's put up, and, like, by the leadership group, and that there's tons of Christians living in Iran. I mean, I actually have people in my street that are Iranian Christians that aren't persecuted necessarily. A lot of people in Iran that are enjoying, I mean, or that live pretty westernized lives. It's not like, covered head to toe, hijab, like, wearing women, like, all over the place, like, or people that don't take in any sort of Western music and culture. That this whole, like, way of the Ayatollah, religious heretic Muslim type, way of being is just a facade, like that. It's not really like that. And even though those people do hold a lot of clout in Iran, and even though those people are the leadership group that runs Iran, you have also an economy that's been in tatters before this conflict broke out. You have a different religious sects that operate in the country. I don't know, like I really can't call it either way. I mean, like I always had the inkling that Iran was the patsy of another Middle Eastern nation, to put it bluntly. Like Iran always played the boogeyman, like the Muslim boogeyman, like in which we had to keep giving away American arms to other nations because this boogeyman existed. Where, thanks to the Trump administration, at a minimum, the Iranian boogeyman of 2025 and years before no longer exist. I mean, like we all now have to get acclimated into a world where, outside of these people pulling off some sort of short-sighted, like terroristic, like drone attack type of strike. The days of Iran being this military superpower with potential nuclear missile capability is no more. But we'll see. I mean, like hopefully a leadership group maybe kills off like these heretic types that want to hold on to power, and that's like why we're seeing like these state. You see on one hand the other day, like right before the 8 p.m. deadline that Trump set out, you had the Iranians essentially opening up the Strait of Hormuz and giving in to Trump's demands, and then the following day, there's statements put out that they still are wishing to pursue the enriching of uranium. So it's kind of like pointing to evidence of maybe two different leadership groups putting statements out there. Like you had Trump say that a certain leadership group in Iran allowed for 8 ships to pass through the Strait of Hormuz, and that was a gift by the group that he was negotiating with, like to the U.S. So maybe that's a group of Iranian leaders that are willing to at the very least negotiate in good faith with the Trump administration. Whereas then you have a different leadership group that's putting out counter statements, basically saying that they're still on dead to America time, and but who knows? I mean, like you got to be able to think multiple ways and think of multiple possibilities that could be playing out. This is all new. Anybody that tells you they have total grip on everything that's happening, especially nowadays, I mean, like, it's very hard to navigate the politics of 2026. And Trump is a big part of that. He doesn't show his cards that often. He often bluffs or makes people show their bluff, and it's one of the reasons why I actually appreciate his way of maneuvering in spite of the fact that I also appreciate some of his politics. But with that, I'm almost home now, so I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your evening. Thank you for watching my content. For those of you that do, bots, haters, um, nevertheless, I need every eye or algorithm that I can get. But with that, I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your evening. Thank you for checking me out. Do like, share, subscribe. Thank you for stepping into the Foul Playland with me. As always, I am Sir Foul Player on my new venture. Behold, peace.